The book, as you probably read, is inspired by my mother, my late mother. And she really was a turquoise butterfly. I mean, she loved turquoise and she was always fluttering around. But really, it's really based on my relationship with one of my granddaughters. And I use my mother as this model because she had grandchildren and great grandchildren, and she was amazing with them. She was very much an artist had an artist sensibility, and she was always creating things with all of her children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. And she lived to be almost 98 years old and was still planning her 98th birthday party. And so I kind of tried to use her as a model. At the same time, I really wanted to address the relationship between elders, and I chose grandparent, but older people and very young people, particularly when one of the people, in this case, the little girl, is very anxious about things and she's very hesitant about things and she's curious and she's delightful and she's eager, but her anxiety holds her back. And what is the best environment to try and nurture that kind of sensibility in a child when you're lucky enough to be able to have time with them? So one of the themes was, what does a grandparent need to do in order to encourage and to be present for and to guide a child who is hesitant, to become more involved and more confident in the world? The other thing was, it's about change, it's about transformation. The little girl is becoming much bolder and dealing with issues that she becomes anxious about, with techniques that come from psychology and that come from child development, but they're delivered by the grandmother. And as the child is getting older and feeling more competent, the grandmother is declining, and they don't switch roles, but it's about caregiving and it's about transformation and it's about love. It's about the eternality of love, that when they see a butterfly, all kinds of things happen. The little girl feels stronger. She feels empowered. She feels her grandmother with her. And then when the grandmother dies, she still feels that internalization of the grandmother and who she was, and that she feels she's part of a very long line of people who love her, who give her strength, who I wanted kids to be able to feel confident even when they don't feel the confidence, that they can be hesitant and still try something, that everything does not have to be perfect. I wanted to get a message of how a grandparent can model flexibility and adaptability and be strong while still, after they have this incident in the water where the grandmother really has to hold it together, the next scene is the grandmother's exhausted and the little girl is taking care of the grandmother. That there is this recognition that we can have independent of our generation, but because our generation is separate, that we can have this recognition of another person's needs and that we have to take a different perspective. I find today that particularly, well, people are in their own age groups and they stay in their echo chambers of their age groups. And some people have a really hard time taking the perspective of another person. And if you're trying to take the perspective of a person from a different generation, you really have to watch, you have to listen, you have to learn how they see the world and why they meander through the world in the way they do. And for kids to be able to kind of get off their phones for a while and learn about a time that was very different from their time through the stories and the memories and learning rituals and just doing things that they wouldn't do in their family, but their grandparents do them. I wanted to try and do all of that when I was writing the book. Amelina Jones is an unbelievably talented but empathic and wonderful, wonderful person, in that she really wanted to bring to the page what a lot of those 4,000 words, which were out needed to show. So I gave her the text and told her what I thought I would like to see, and with page layouts and things like that. Because remember, I never wrote a children's book before. I've read a lot of children's books, but I'd never written one. And I had in my mind, Jake, what I thought I wanted. And then this was even before I selected her as the illustrator. But then I said, wait a minute, this is a book about emotions. I need to have somebody who can capture all these myriad feelings that this older woman and this younger child are experiencing over 3 years. So she has to, or he has to be able to show the maturation and the decline and all of this. And I had envisioned kind of a very minimalist, two dots, a dot, and a dot. And I said, that's not going to work. So when I saw her illustrations, I looked through hundreds of illustrators. They just spoke to me because so much of what I wanted to write about took place in nature. And I wanted somebody who could really capture nature with a whimsical feeling but a realistic feeling. And I thought she did. And when I sent her the content, um, she gave me a few sketches and I responded to those sketches because I really wanted them to reflect my mother. And I sent her photographs of my mother. And I sent her, one photograph I sent, my mother was in a belly dancing costume in a turquoise leotard. And she got it. And in one, she used a 3-point cane when you may remember in the scene where the grandmother's using a cane. And I said, my mother would never use the 3-point cane. She needs a really hip cane and this and that. And she did. And she was so responsive. And there were very few adjustments that I made because she got it. And I would tell her, I couldn't, this part is not in the content, but can you give this feeling? And she did. So we went back and forth. I've never met her. She lives in Costa Rica. It's all been online. And she actually illustrated the other book that I just wrote, because she was so phenomenal to work with. And I love her art.